I'm going to talk about these philosophers who I've listed in the title of my video, Kant and Whitehead, um, and cognition, which means, usually it's defined as that aspect of your experience that thinks, reasons, judges certain facts about the world. Um, that's usually how we would define cognition. Now, there's a lot of implications which follow from this definition. Um, the most important of which, at least that I can think of at the moment, is that cognitive scientists are going to look in the brain, based on this definition, for um, certain symbolic structures capable of processing those facts about the world, which theoretically can be represented as information. Facts about the world make up that set of information that we can have about the world using our mind, or that aspect of our experience we call cognition. Um, so, in talking about these philosophers, Kant and Whitehead, I don't pretend to be an expert on them by any means. I'm realizing now that I've been talking to um, philosophers, people who have been studying and writing philosophy for many years, or much older than I am, I realize that you don't really ever arrive at any conclusions about anything. You kind of are in a perpetual state of development. I mean, at least if you are a philosopher, a lover of wisdom, it's not because you want to find some set of doctrines that would provide you with some answer. Your answer is not, it's not a set of doctrines, because you don't even, the problem for a philosopher is really figuring out what kinds of questions to ask more than it is figuring out what the answers are. Um, so I'm not an expert on either of these two philosophers. I'm just saying what I think at this particular time in my life about what I have read of these philosophers and what I have read others say of these philosophers, um, and what my experience of life brings to the table. Um, where all these other factors are seated with me. So don't necessarily take anything I say seriously. I'm not saying these are facts. I'm not pretending to offer you true information about reality, independent of my subjective appreciation of that reality. So don't expect to hear anything like that from me. Of course, I've just redefined cognition by saying that, right? I've said that, well, information isn't really actual. It's not concrete. It's actually abstract. So it's not actual. It's distant. It's possible. And when we abstract in a certain way with our language, we're not just making a passive, not just offering a passive description or representation or model of reality. No, anytime we abstract and speak about nature in a particular way, we're actually performing an action. So cognition, contrary to our common sense understanding of it, is not a passive mirroring of a pre-given world. It's not a representation, a re-presentation of the picture, this set of facts that are given. Cognition is actually an active process. emotion is part of it. So if we go to Kant, we see that, well, after reading Newton and the other scientists who were just beginning to consider nature as a mechanism for the first time, as a finite structure of space and time, within which certain properties that can be mathematically measured hold true. And the reason that these scientists, like Newton as the paradigm example, Descartes as another, in order to believe in these laws, these a priori principles of thought, as Kant later called them, but for Newton these were characteristics of the world itself that he was capable of knowing because God existed transcendently, not in nature. Nature was a machine, but God created and designed the machine. And not only that, but gave you a privileged position within it. God gave you an intellect, and your intellect has existing within it clear and distinct ideas of the true state of nature, of the world. Kant and Hume first was skeptical of this. Hume was, he was an atheist pretty much. He no longer thought the hypothesis of God was warranted because one could not offer proof. One could not arrange for some experiment which might prove that God existed. And you only ever hear by way of hearsay about miracles, typically. Miracles as in, walking on water, or someone actually ascending in the flesh to heaven. These are things we hear stories about. No one's actually ever seen this, at least unless you believe what you've heard. So, Hume recognized this and analyzed sense perception in a particular way, which was that it is composed of these discrete facts. That's the primary level of our experience, of what we empirically observe, are just these discrete, if we're talking about visual experience, these discrete splotches of bare sensa, bare, a bare information without any interpretation added, without any order added, just something, but nothing you can assign causality to. You don't recognize, you don't see or empirically experience the cause of the sun rising. You don't experience one ball hitting another ball as though this ball caused this ball. You just see, whenever a ball comes to here and hits this, it moves that way. Just based on watching it happen, though, Hume thought that you couldn't recognize causality as intrinsic to it. For all we know, I could hit my other arm and it wouldn't move, or my arm would go through it. And for some reason, probably just because there was no longer that, let's go back to Hume for a second. Hume was rather skeptical of reason's ability to know the world in itself. Once he gave up on God as a legitimate hypothesis, he was skeptical that our sensory perception, which was what for Hume, that's all the information we had about reality. All of it comes through there, through that filter of five senses. Kant said that this woke him from his slumber when he realized what Hume was talking about, and I'll discuss it in the next